Rachel Carr's Bible tour of Turkey. Yeah, what's going on, party people? The place to be. I go by the name of the BK Apologist, transmitting all the way live. New York is the city, Brooklyn is the borough. What's good? What's popping? Hope everybody's doing well. Gotta say what's up to the party people in the chat. We got Adrian. We got Climb the Mountain. We got DCTHAS. So we got some more people here. Hopefully they will start coming in shortly. And of course, if you have not already, please like and share and subscribe. Share this link. Tell a friend to tell a friend that's him again. And if you like how it goes down with BK Apologists, you can show your love by throwing a little digital coinage my way via the PayPal link that's pinned on top of the chat. Or if you want to be a monthly supporter of BK, you could become a Patreon. We get an assortment of goodies to enhance your personal Bible study. And I'm here with a good friend of mine's, somebody we've known each other for a minute, right?
As you like to say, how was it like when Noah walked the earth or something?
There you go. Something like that. A good, amazing woman of God and a good friend, Rachel Carr, ladies and gentlemen. So Rachel, tell the people a little bit about yourself and,
Certainly. Thank you. First of all, that intro made me feel like I need to be breakdancing or something. I don't know. I was like, oh, shoot. No, But as Alfredo already mentioned, first of all, Alfredo, thank you so much for having me on the show.
Sure.
My only regret is that we can't see you, but I know you're here.
Yes, I'm here.
But we have known each other for a long time, since you were part of the congregation in Brooklyn before you shifted to Manhattan.
Yep.
I'm originally from Chicago. I became part of the family churches I'm part of now when I was in college, and then I moved to New York 1990, however long ago that was, 36 years ago.
Okay.
I am a career teacher, but I did retire last year from the New York City Department of Education after 34 years of service to the students and the families. And here I am.
Congrats.
So yeah. So that's in short who I am, and just loved as I've been, journeying along, always looking for ways to up level my walk with God. Always trying to figure that out. I'm single, I have no kids, no husband, and that can be a half full, half empty thing sometimes. But this case, for this, what I'm going to share about this evening was definitely a grateful thing that it wasn't just other considerations I had to think about. So yeah.
Right. And and speaking of that, so you went on a tour of Turkey, a biblical tour. So my first initial question before we get into it is, what was it about this that you felt, I don't want to say the need, but why did you want to go on this tour?
Okay, yeah, great question. So I don't know if your listeners are familiar with the BEMA podcast. I'm not getting paid by them, anybody. So right. But the BEMA podcast is a podcast I began listening to probably about 5 or 6 years ago, most like around the pandemic-y kind of space.
Yeah.
And Marty Solomon is the person that sort of spearheaded that up. He has a co-host named Brett Billings. Anyway, I started listening to the podcast because I wanted to just get a new perspective on the scriptures and just realize that my way of looking at things was limited. So I like what he does when he introduces the scriptures from the Eastern point of view. So he basically brings in a perspective that is incorporating the Jewish background, which, Jesus was Jewish. So, that kind of makes sense, right?
Right.
So I started listening to the podcast about 5 years ago, and he starts at Genesis, and he kept talking about going to Turkey, and he has these trips, and I have put it on my kind of bucket list, to do in a few years. But last year, it actually came about that I was able to sign up and get a chance to go, and that's basically how it started. It was something in the making, probably like the last 5 years or so, and I was able to do it. Thank God this past year, yeah.
Cool, cool. So now that you've been there, you experienced it, you saw these things firsthand, how has it changed your perspective on the Bible?
Whoo, whoo, whoo. How do you summarize 12 days of intense Bible study? I think the first thing it helped me to do was realize that the pool, POOL, of Christianity is a lot bigger than I had ever thought it was.
Okay.
Um, it helped me to see how crucial it was to have the scriptures in me. That was something that was talked about a lot when we were away. Just that how the Jewish Talmudim, how they had the Jewish disciples, how they had
Right,
to have the scriptures in them. Like if you started a verse, they could finish it. They could
right,
tell you when something was off. And so it just hit me that I need to work so much harder. And I've been doing it since the trip. Work so much harder in terms of memorizing scripture. And I'm talking about like chunks,
yeah,
like big chunks. And so that was one thing. And I think the other thing was just seeing the historical context, be able to stand where Paul was standing, to be able to
right.
have seen where the Ephesian elders said goodbye. Just that was just very, very powerful. And having those visuals was something. I know we'll look at that later, but having those visuals, be able to see what the first churches went through,
Right,
was
right.
like whoa, like very eye opening for me.
Cool, cool. So yeah, so I know when you went there, you took some videos and some pictures. So we're gonna try to recreate the tour a little bit, and we're gonna look at some images, and you're gonna break down, what we're looking at. So with that being said, uh, some history about Ephesus. Approximately half of the New Testament was written to, from, or about Ephesus. Paul and John were both in Ephesus during their lives, though probably not at the same time. Emperor Domitian was incredibly cruel to Christians. His terror was said to be greater than Nero's. I agree. He demanded that his subjects worship him as God while he was still living. This type of worship was typically not expected until an emperor died. He also exiled John in the island of Patmos. And here are some slides that were taken on Rachel's trip. So here's the first video.
Miletus, where Paul said goodbye to the Ephesian elders.
All right, so give us a little breakdown about what we're seeing here.
Yeah, so that is in Acts. I forget which chapter, but it talks about where he said goodbye to the Ephesian elders, and I believe that scripture talks about they had to tear themselves away from him, and that's what we're seeing. We're seeing the theater where he said goodbye to them. We're seeing the theater in Ephesus where he did a lot of preaching and basically like the town center. So that was part of what we saw when we were there.
So this is where he had that conversation. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool.
So it was
Cool.
one of the places that he had it. The people you're seeing are folks that were on the tour with me. There were about 45 of us. So
Okay.
so if you see folks kind of around, that's the tour group that I was with.
Cool. Cool. Also,
And this is
again, this is where.
yeah, this is
Yeah.
another shot of that where another part of outside the town where he actually said goodbye to them. And that verse has always meant a lot to me since young days as being a Christian, because it was like they had to tear themselves away, and it sort of made me think about like how much is my heart invested in my ministry
Right.
that I would need to tear myself away. Like that was always very striking to me.
That's a great point. Was it? It looks super sunny. Was it warm out there? Was it hot?
It was it. Marty had said that we were lucky with the heat that it wasn't as hot as it normally is. Apparently, it gets like can get up to like 100 degrees, but I think for us it was like 85, 90. Humidity was not that bad, but
Okay.
it was definitely sunny, and there was a lot. If you see well, you'll probably see more terrain, but the terrain was very rocky, very
Right.
uneven. It was a
Right.
very difficult journey for me physically. But yeah,
Right.
so that's that. It was definitely sunny.
Okay. And what are we looking at here?
So this is a temple. I was about 15 miles from Miletus, and a lot of times people couldn't get to the city center, so they had these temples that they would go to, where they would go to seek guidance from the oracles. And the oracle was basically someone that would be sitting above like this area. I'm probably going to get it all wrong, but I'm going to try my best. Where
Hmm.
these gaseous fumes from underground would come, and that's how they would sort of get into a whole other space mentally and
Right.
psychologically. So a lot of times people would come to these oracles to ask some questions about, well, should I continue in this business or not, or what do you think should happen? And then they had to bring a goat for an offering or something to offer the oracle so that they could get an answer from them. Kind of like, I'm going to give you this in order for you to go to the gods on my behalf
Right.
and to
Right.
get an answer for me.
And that's interesting, right? Because when you contrast the way they received inspired message
Hmm.
compared to not only the Christians but the prophets of old, they didn't get zapped
No.
and they started writing it. Then they came to and it's like, oh man, I wrote this. This is amazing. That
Hmm.
wasn't, it was inspiration, but God allowed the prophets and the Christians to actually use their own style even though they're being inspired to write certain messages, but God allowed them to convey that message in their way. So it's a big difference between getting high off of gaseous fumes to
Yes.
tell a
Yes. Yes.
story, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah, because like this was something where like obviously Christians weren't doing this, but like you said, God had a way of working, but He did it in such a way that people could receive it and then transmit it the way it needed to be.
that's absolutely. So is this the same theater or is this a different one?
It's probably a different one, but it's I just like the architecture, so I just took
Okay.
pictures there while we were looking at those things.
Cool, cool, cool. All right.
Oh, I love this one. Okay, so I think Marty's pointing. There's some Jewish letter, and Alfredo, you know this one better than I did because you put a nice little descriptor in the next slide.
Hmm.
But a lot of times, the reason why I love this is because a lot of times, as a Western Christian, I thought that Jewish and Gentiles were always at each other's throats. That the reason why that there was just always conflict. And
Right.
there definitely was conflict. But at the very beginning of the movement, if you will, if we can call it that, this is showing us, that's lettering that is showing us that Jewish and Gentiles believers came together under one cause. They came together for the cause of Christ. And it shows that there was brotherhood. And the reason why this is like one of my favorite pictures is that it makes me think about the brotherhood that I believe God wants us to have with people in different Christianity pools that we have today.
Right.
And so it's the Theosabus, like the God believers and the Jewish Christians. So it was, yeah, it was. I think the Theosabus was the Gentile believers, and then
Uh-huh.
of course there were the Jewish believers.
Yeah, that's this is huge, and so yeah, I mean, it's you can have both at the same time, right? There's going to be times where there's going to be conflict, and there's going to be times where we're being able to be united, and that hasn't stopped, right? It's like,
Yes.
especially if you are a part of a multicultural church, there's a lot of benefits from that, but there's also a lot of challenges,
Yes.
because what one ethnic group thinks is humorous, the other one thinks it's offensive, right? So it's
Yes.
like there's this constant humility of understanding the other person's view of life, right?
Right.
So that we can have this unity without being involved in uniformity, right?
Mhm.
So that's the challenge. So
Yeah. Yeah.
and what do we have here, Rach?
Okay, the Bulletarian. So this was basically, think of it like the council, like the city council or
Okay.
Congress
Okay.
of the city at the time. And this is where they met. This was basically their place of meeting. And what I appreciated about this particular picture is that it was shared with us that many people that were part of the leading group of the city were women.
Right.
And that was big for me. So there were quite a few women who were recognized in terms of their leadership abilities, in terms of their ability to help come to decisions
Right.
that would be best for the entire group of people in the city. So that's basically what this is standing for,
Right.
where they met.
Yeah, and that's another popular myth that women didn't have any kind of influence in antiquity, right? So, but
Hmm.
even in the New Testament, we see women prophets, right? We have women prophets, and we have how do you call it? Forgot her name. That she was a patron for Paul. Paul called her a client. You know,
Lydia? No.
no, it wasn't Lydia. It was forgot her name. I think it starts with a P.
Okay.
But she was a boss lady. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
Second Corinthians was a response to something that was happening at Chloe's household.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So women definitely, they had some stake in what was going on in antiquity. They really did. So,
Yes. And even the Old
Pop around
Testament,
the
you've got
site.
Deborah,
oh, sorry.
a judge.
Pop around the.
Um,
Right.
and and even what I love too, and even in Jesus' genealogy, there are four women mentioned.
Sure.
And
Absolutely.
it's like, and these weren't women of they were women that would have been considered the outsiders, Rahab, Tamar,
Right. Right.
Ruth,
Right.
and
Right.
Uriah's wife, Bathsheba. So I love the fact that I know it's a little off track, but that even Jesus' genealogy shows that there's a prominence for women, and that the women that he allowed that are in his genealogy
Right.
are those that other people might have said they don't deserve to be there. And so I really appreciate that about
It was
Jesus.
Priscilla Lauren. Thank you. It was Priscilla. It was Priscilla. No, no, that's Priscilla and Aquila. Well, I mean, she was important too, but
Yes.
I don't think that's her though. Also, right, the two people who first uh spoke about the risen Savior, it was two women,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
it's a big
Mary.
deal. It's a big
Yes.
deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, let's get to the
Yep.
next video here.
Pop around the site.
Ephesus. Ephesus.
Um, all right, and people will also call this the upper theater. It's got a stage and a shape to it that they might have used as multi-purpose. I'm not aware of another place where we found the Bulletarian for here, and I imagine that it's a larger place with a city of 500,000 people. So I was always taught to me that this was the Bullet.
So I believe it might have been the same, but it might have been a different theater. I wanted to though with this picture, it's just interesting to see the how can I put it? I want to say topography, the architecture,
Right,
and just how fit these people had to be to just
right,
go up and down and in and
right,
out,
right.
and they didn't have guardrails, so just being able to sit there when people had sat there from many years ago who were listening to Jesus, who not Jesus, who were listening to Paul and possibly John at some point as well was pretty amazing.
Nice, nice. Oh, wait.
Pop around the site.
Okay, hold on.
Pop around the.
All right. And what is this here?
Oh, that's the road leading down towards the from the beginning of the city, going down towards another side of the city. This was where Domitian. I had mentioned him. We had mentioned him a little bit earlier.
Yes.
Domitian was really he was scary. He was
Right.
really scary. We hear about Nero a lot, but apparently Domitian was a whole lot worse. And this was his, I believe, it was called his Neopolis, which is where it was like his seat outside of Rome, where he would. That's where he set up his government outside of Rome. So it was a big deal. And Ephesus, if I'm not mistaken, Ephesus had been pretty much they had tried to stand up against other Caesars and they got demolished. So at this point, Ephesus is like, okay, we want to make Caesar happy because The
Right.
last time we weren't making him happy. He basically killed all of us. So yeah,
Right.
this is just part of the city that that Domitian has as part of his city seat, if you will, or seat of
Okay.
the country in Asia Minor.
And what do we have here?
I believe that is part of, is that the library? Go to the next slide for me because I think that will help me. Yes. Okay.
Wisdom, courage,
So
truth, character. What's carved into this part of the library in Ephesus?
okay. So I believe that picture prior was another architectural piece that is tied to this library. This
Okay.
was what you're looking at now is one of the libraries that they had in Ephesus. And those words that I shared are actually words that are carved into, I believe they're carved into the stone above the pillars.
Okay.
And that's just showing you like what the library at that time looked like.
Wow.
Yeah,
Nice.
pretty neat.
Nice.
Yeah. That
Yeah.
is a baptistry. There is a church, I think it was the Church of St. Mary outside of Ephesus. And that is a baptistry that was there. You could walk into it from either side.
Right.
Also, I believe this particular site was, you could tell it was octagonal, eight-sided. And so whenever a building was built in an octagonal fashion, it means that it was built for someone who had been a martyr.
Wow.
So you would know that, I'm not sure who it was that was martyred, but this church was, or this particular area had been built to honor someone that had been martyred.
And unfortunately, that happened quite a bit throughout,
Yeah.
antiquity. So,
Yeah.
and now actually, a lot of countries in the Middle East, Christians are still to this day being set on fire, and you know, eyes being gouged out. So it's still happening. We're still being
Yeah.
persecuted. So
Yeah.
yeah.
This is a stone in front of a shop, and that stone meant that the person was a Christian that owned the shop. Um, the cross in the middle was Jesus, the Son of God, and God was a circle. I don't remember the other inside part, but this is something that was shown to represent people who are Christians.
So they had a lot of stores, like small storefronts that people
Right.
come to and do their buying and selling.
Right.
And outside of the store, you would have something carved into the stone to represent what the merchant wanted to know about, what it was you need to know about them. And this was a visible sign that someone claimed Jesus is Lord,
Right.
which, for us, yeah, okay, Jesus is Lord. But keep in mind that Caesar was considered Lord.
Of course.
So to say Jesus is Lord in
It's an
that
act of
type
sedition.
of,
It's an act of
yeah,
sedition.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, yeah. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You see, and people, yeah, to your point, people forget how much of a revolutionary outfit Christianity was in the first
mhm,
century. It
yeah,
was very countercultural. It was very anti-empire, and we are supposed to still be anti-empire. So,
yes, yes,
okay. All right. So I guess we'll go into Sardis,
yes.
ancient city. Had a fascination with death and burial. Both had a Acropolis on one mountain and a necropolis, I guess, on the other side. All cities had a graveyard, but Sardis was unique in that its graveyard was also on a mountain.
Sardis,
From this mountain.
Acropolis,
You're this way. That's very
Necropolis, City of the Dead.
off the backside. In fact, if you kind of look, you can get the sense, even from where we stand, you can get the sense there's a sheer drop off.
So I realized we didn't talk about the specific focus of the trip. The specific focus, and seeing stars, I said, oh shoot, I just missed that whole part. The specific focus of the trip was on the letters that were written to the seven churches in Revelation.
Mm-hmm.
Sardis was one of those churches.
Mm.
And so when you had asked me before, like, what was it I took away? I will never read those seven letters the same way again.
Right.
Because, like, even when it talked about the city of Sardis, wake up, strengthen, what means what that's about to die. Like, he went into just the history of that area and just all the imagery that John was using in his writing. in order
Right.
to bring home the point of persevere. The battle has been won. You know how this story ends.
Yep.
And so, the what was interesting about Sardis is that every city had an acropolis where they had the city center and all the other stuff, and they all had a graveyard. But the graveyard was typically outside the city. And so, but to have it on a mountain that kind of mirrored the Acropolis was unique to Sardis.
Right. Well, that's interesting too, because I know in the ancient Near East, people looked at mountains as the abode of the gods.
Mm,
Because it was so far from mere mortals. So the
hmm
gods have to live in the mountains. So
hmm
the mountains were always looked at as a divine locale.
hmm
So
hmm
Anchor and then kind of hold your
Gymnasium, also known as the
whatever shows
Educational
up
Center
in
of
the grid.
Sardis.
The apps there, you would assume that up there, like say up top towards the top of the apps there, you have somebody steady in the app. So similar to the
that don't look so old.
They don't. And you know what gets me? This has been around for 2,000 plus years,
It don't look that old. That's
you
crazy.
know, and it's still standing after earthquakes. Like,
Right, right. True, true, true.
and I think they just put up a house in my neighborhood, and I'm like, how long is that going to last? So,
Right, right,
but
right,
gymnasium for us in America typically means like a place where you have physical PE, physical education, that kind of thing.
right,
But
right.
for them, a gymnasium was the educational center in general. And this was this huge area. Like, I'm just what I took the picture of or the video of was just like the outside of it or the inside
Hmm.
of it, the inside part. But that whole courtyard, I didn't pan around and see everything, was all about where students would meet. They would have small classrooms. They'd meet with their professors and have conversations about different things of intellectual pursuit.
Nice. Okay, okay.
Hmm.
Oh, this was
This
fun.
is a synagogue in Sardis. So I guess, I mean, we'll find out more, but I guess whenever they say synagogue, this is something that. Are those drones up there? What? They didn't have drones in 80. Let me stop.
Well, it should be, Chris.
Okay, so that was funny because as I'm taking the video, I saw this drone and I'm like, what? But one of the guys he was doing like drones to help recapture some of the things we were learning. But yeah, that was my first time stepping inside of a synagogue, which was really, really cool. And it was right on the edge of the gymnasium. So the thing
Mm,
that was brought up with this was one of the things that Christians had to figure out was how are they going to interact with the culture?
right.
Like, are they going to separate themselves? Like I think the Essenes did. Are they going to be, how are they going to do
Hmm.
that?
Hmm.
And so this particular synagogue was built right next to the gymnasium. Like the wall on the other side is actually where we were when I took that picture of the gymnasium where all
Hmm.
the educational stuff took place. So this particular synagogue was an example of how the Jewish Christians decided to interact with culture. They decided to be right there with the culture so that they could influence what was going on there. So
Right.
that's what was something that was really impressive about this particular
So
synagogue.
funny you should say that because in Revelation it talks about the synagogue of Satan that Jesus calls
Hmm
a group of people, and basically what was happening here is to your point. The Christians at this time they didn't, at least from a cultural aspect, they didn't split from the other Jews because
Mm-mm.
the first Christians were Jews.
Yes, exactly.
So they stayed within the culture. They still kept Shabbat. They still ate kosher, but not because there was a mandate, a Torah mandate, but because this is what you did as a
Hmm
Jew. But what ended up happening is because they started having influence and they started converting
hmm
people in these synagogues. So
hmm
these synagogue rulers were not happy because they were no longer the leaders because now the rabbi that they would listen to is Yeshua,
hmm
not Rabbi Shlomo, right?
hmm
So So these dudes would snitch to the Roman government because they were scared that if they would lose influence,
Yeah.
that they will also lose whatever political financial ability that the government gave them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they would tell the government about these other Jews in the synagogue and call them devils.
Mm-hmm.
So Jesus is saying, no, 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 no. You're the synagogue saying, not these guys.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
just thought I add my two
Yeah.
cents.
And that was a point that was brought up, was that the synagogue of Satan was referred to what you said, which is people that wouldn't accept the newer converts as part of their fellowship,
Right.
that they were the ones. And so I think that's why that, like, even I think that's maybe that's why we, when the Jewish Gentile split happened,
Mm-hmm.
that's probably, how that began, whatever the case. I'm not a history
Yeah.
buff. This is my first
Well,
time.
that's one of the variables that caused the
Okay.
split. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, but just seeing it and just was incredible. So
Nice. All right, here we go. Wait.
that is the Torah table.
This
Oh,
is
we
a
was there already.
synagogue.
Okay.
That was a Torah table. A Torah was so. This is now on the other, still in the synagogue. You can see in the background where I took those other pictures of the gymnasium. So
Yeah.
this is a Torah table where they would put the Torah.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty big.
That's good.
It's pretty
Yeah.
big.
Yeah.
The Torah closet where they would store the scrolls.
And today, and even in modern synagogues, they have a similar structure in their room as well for the Torah.
Okay.
There's a whole ceremony when they open up the closet and they bring out the Torah. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. Yeah.
Because it's so sacred, right? They didn't have
Yeah.
Bibles in their hands. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whichever person was supposed to read Torah for that service would sit there. That was Moses' seat.
Right.
And I think, like, my mind immediately went back to the New Testament when Jesus was talking about people sitting in Moses' seat, and that's what that brought to life for me. That particular picture.
No, I mean that's dope to actually see the very thing that you've been reading all this time, right? It's
Yeah.
pretty dope. It's pretty dope. All right, so
Pisidian Antioch. So there's some holes in that stone. I don't know how they did it, but I guess there were holes in the stone, and whatever was in those holes, I think there were letters, and those letters they could date back to the time frame of Pisidian Antioch. And so, because a lot what was brought up was, well, how do you know this was actually AD 50 or
Right.
whatever? And so archaeologists are able to figure it out based on the things that were actually in the holes in that stone. So that were being held by the holes that were in the stone.
So it's a very old mailbox. Is that that's
Yeah,
what you're saying?
yeah.
Okay. Cool.
This gate that you see in front of us is the gate of Pisidian Antioch. And one of the two doorways that you see, we know for 99% certainty that Paul walked through one of them. I can't believe it.
So that was me, like, I can't believe I'm going to walk through the gate where Paul walked. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it.
Nice.
Oh my gosh. Like, it was ooh. Oh, okay.
And of course, this is where they coined the term Christians first, right? And Antioch was actually known for their satire. They like to be very comedic and they gave any people group that was there, they gave them a name, a funny name. Like, this is part of the culture. So it wasn't like something unique they did for the Christians. No, any people group that was there, they gave them some kind of slick talking name.
Okay.
Even to the Caesar, they gave him a name, and there's actually an actual letter where he's combating against Antioch for, hey, don't call me that. I'm really a good person, because he was actually upset because of the satire.
Yeah.
It was like the Saturday Night Live of antiquity. That's what Antioch was. So yeah.
Oh my goodness, yes. So that was one of the basilicas there. I want to say it was in Antioch. I'm pretty sure it was. Yeah.
Okay, okay.
All right, this is
Oh,
fascinating. It's
Cappadocia.
Cappadocia, and it is home to the church fathers. Um, we're going to be seeing more of this later, but if you can see the city in the background, and a lot of the places I believe were where Christians hid when they were being persecuted. You can see like the doorways and stuff in the distance. Yeah, wow. Then the city just sort of comes up out of nowhere almost. This traces back its roots to Hittite, which is definitely pre Christian era.
Mm.
Okay, Cappadocia. It was our last stop. Um, I just to see it feels like it felt like you were it was a drawing first of all. It felt kind of surreal, you know. But then just to see where people had to hide so Rome could not find them or
Right,
Rome would think twice about looking for them. Part of the trip here, I wasn't able to go on this part of the trip because just physically I wasn't able to handle it. But there was a part of the trip where a lot of the participants got a chance to go underground
nice.
and get a lesson like the underground was like a maze that you had to memorize in the dark because Rome
Right,
was looking for you and you had to
right,
be quiet. Like just to think about what people went through because they loved God, because they wanted to follow Jesus was like
right.
amazing just to see it like this.
And again, right, because we are so comfortable in America, and amen for the comfortability that we get, we forget how dangerous it was to follow
Mhm.
Jesus. It was, they had to, like you said, they had to go into these stone created
Mhm.
domiciles for protection.
Mhm.
And you also said that prior to that, this was carved out by the Hittites, you said,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And the Hittites play a major part in the Bible too, because uh, what we have in the Old Testament that's known as Deuteronomy, right? It's a covenant that Israel takes with Jesus. With Jesus, well, yeah, Jesus was there too, but Yahweh,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it was called a vassal treaty. Vassal treaties had, I mean, there was various people that used this, but it was the Hittites that were known for the Caesarean vassal treaties. And when
Mhm.
you look at Deuteronomy, the format is very similar to the treaties that the Hittites would use. So they
Mhm.
had a influence in the Bible as well. So,
Yeah, yeah.
all right,
So this at towards like the last couple of days, we actually saw churches from different eras of development of Christianity. It
right,
was really fascinating to see how the communication of the text, if you will, how it evolved.
okay,
A lot of pictures, a lot of icons, eventually a lot of more written words, and it really made me appreciate just what went into making sure that we have the scriptures in our hands today. So
yes,
this was still in Cappadocia, and it was outside of a church there. And church. Oh, let me clarify. Churches there were not what we think of today. Churches varied depending on the time frame. So there were some places where, churches were just places where people went, two or three people went and
hmm,
looked at the iconography and said, "Oh, okay, we're going to be connecting with this person today," or whatever the case may be. It wasn't these big, vast things like we might think of today, at least not initially.
okay, okay.
That's another church that we were outside of.
That looks like something out of Tatooine in Star Wars, right? So, but you can see where Star Wars gets
Yeah,
their idea
yeah,
from. You know what I mean? So,
yeah,
from
yeah,
these
yeah.
ancient places, yeah.
Mhm. Oh my goodness, this was something else. So the part I circled in red, they actually used pigeons to deliver messages. I don't know how they did it, But like the pigeon from Ephesus would fly to Cappadocia with the message on its leg or on its
Right.
whatever. And so they had certain keyholes they went into, and that was their way of getting mail.
Wow.
Crazy.
Pretty sophisticated. You
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
This
Oh,
is a
this was amazing.
tomb that would have been similar to what Jesus was buried in. And we were also, it was also explained that 3 days, 1 hour of any day is a Jewish day.
Yep.
So if Jesus went into the tomb an hour before sundown on the day before Passover, that was one day. He was in the tomb for the 24 hours, that was the second day. And then if he was in the tomb an hour past sundown on the third day, then that counts for the 3 days. So in the Jewish world, 26 hours could equal 3 days. Cool stuff. Thank you. Yeah. Okay.
You know, it's funny. I know in Easter, a lot of people try to discredit the resurrection,
Yeah.
and they'll talk about there's no way it's not 3 days, without understanding the culture and the
Yeah.
custom. But funny enough, right? We still use that kind of time frame today. Like for instance,
Mm-hmm.
the normal work day is usually an 8-hour shift.
Mm-hmm.
So when you leave, you say, "Hey, what'd you do?" "Oh, I worked all day." You didn't work all day. You worked for 8 hours,
8 hours.
but we consider that a day's work, right?
That's
So
true. I never thought of that.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
anyway, continue.
No, that's such a great point. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Because I had never understood the 3 days. I just never. And so that was huge. That's a huge learning for me. But then
Right,
the other part was just seeing what a tomb might have looked like where Jesus wasn't buried here, but that this was an example of what it
right,
may have looked
right,
like. It's like now a visual that's going to be with me.
right. And someone brought up the thing about how important it is to know culture and time. Yeah, because the Bible is written for us, but not to us,
Mm,
right? So the Bible is written what's known as a high context culture, meaning that
mm,
the writer wasn't going to be redundant in when they convey certain things to the audience because they already knew what the audience knew, so they're not going to
yes.
explain things that they knew, right? So
Yeah.
like for instance, if I tell Rachel, "Hey Rachel, I'm going to meet you at church, I'm going to take an Uber," I'm not going to explain to her what an Uber is.
Right.
She
Right.
know,
Right.
but 1,000 years from now, someone reads that text is like, "Uber." Well,
Yeah.
Uber German means great, so you took his
Yeah.
greatness. Like, how does
Yeah.
that work? You know what I mean? They wouldn't
Yeah.
know unless you understand how we use the word, right?
Right.
So it is important to understand the culture behind the Old Testament and the New Testament.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, yeah, this was just some of the slides, pictures, and just I'm so grateful that I got a chance to share. So grateful that I got a chance to go. Um, and I, yeah, I think this will be something that remains lodged in my storehouse of memories for a long time.
Right, right.
Um, yeah. So yeah.
Man, that's pretty dope. It's pretty dope. So yeah, so all right, so what changed? Like what are some things that you thought you understood that completely rocked your world? It's like, man, I was wrong about this when you got there.
Yeah. Okay. Hopefully I get this all right. But there is a part, the role of women makes sense. I'm a woman. Yeah.
Right.
And the challenge that we often face when we talk about, well, why does God tell the women to be submissive? Blah blah blah. That kind of thing.
Right.
Um, Understanding, like you talked about context and culture,
Yes. Yes.
and I hope I get this right. That culture at that time, women were expected to. They were just all over the place. They were loud. They were brash. They were this. They were that. And Jesus and Paul and all those guys tended to go countercultural,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So the idea of being submissive to your husband, saying the girl that's not married, but the idea was in a way for, how can I put it? Because they were going so countercultural, that's what would show what God was, with who Jesus is. For us today, it might be something totally different. It would be something totally different. What might be different today is what's going to be countercultural. Well, what would be countercultural is um, living your life in service of others. That's totally countercultural.
Right, right.
What would be countercultural is loving your enemies. That's totally counter. So I think it was just the whole idea of not picking and choosing scriptures to prove the point you wanted to prove, but to actually look at the whole history behind it and understand that you're always evolving. Nobody has the right answer. No, I mean, I've often, because I've been part of our church for so long, it's easy to get to a place where you can think, I know it. And even though you may say, no, I don't really think I know it all. Yeah, you do.
Right.
No, I really need to learn something. Yeah, yeah, you know, no, you're really kind of sitting on your laurels, kind of saying, yeah, I know what that meant, but no, you really don't. So I think for me, it was like really getting to the point of there's so much that I need to relearn, if you will,
Right.
in terms of just the spirit, in terms of walking with God, in terms of what He values, in terms of how that brushes up against what I want. So I think it was just what changed a lot for me was just the way I'm looking at things now, and not necessarily jumping to conclusions. How I look at the poor, how I treat them now, how I
Mhm.
look at the outsiders. You know, when
Right.
I say outsiders, what I mean is like even in our congregations, there are people on the periphery. There are,
Right.
you know, the
Right.
person that sits by themselves on Sunday mornings and they're not really interacting with anybody. And you know, like how do I interact with them? People that can't come to church. Do I
Right.
forget about them? Or do I make an effort to not forget about them so that they can feel as part of God's family as well?
No,
So
that's
I
good.
think
That's
it's
good.
just how I'm looking at people now. It has definitely undergone a change.
That is well said. Well said. Well said. I mean, to your point, right? Because context, man, it helps you not to read things into scripture. Like, for instance, when Paul talks about, you know, I do not permit a woman to teach and that she'll be saved through childbirth. That sounds a little crazy, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Because out the blue, he's like, it was man who was created first, not woman. I'm like, yo, but who's saying that?
yeah.
Well, the people that was saying it was there was a prominent temple to the goddess Artemis,
Mm-hmm.
and this temple was being served by an all-woman priesthood, and people throughout the world will go to the temple of Artemis to get oracles, and these women would teach a different creation story where woman was created first, not man. And Artemis was the goddess of childbirth. So what ended up happening is a lot of these women would become Christians.
Mm-hmm.
And Paul had to remind us, like, okay, now that you're a Christian, you know, this is the creation story. And the problem was they were scared that because they left Artemis, they felt like they wouldn't be protected when they gave birth. And
Mm-hmm.
Paul was reassuring that no, you are saved through your childbirth. You're going to be okay. That's
Yeah,
what he meant,
yeah.
you know. And then in Second Corinthians, where it talks about, you know, women teaching, not teaching, well, it's talking about order of worship. Because if you read the entire paragraph, he's telling a lot of people to shut up, right? He's telling people that, well, if you have the gift of tongues, but you can't interpret it, I need you to be quiet,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? And then he tells, okay, the prophets will take their turn. But remember, there's female prophets in the New Testament. So when he's talking about the prophets, he's also talking about females.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, the women that are told not to talk were the females who weren't prophets.
Mm-hmm.
But watch what he does here. He says, well, whatever questions you may have, go home and your husband will teach you. this was radical because in the Greco-Roman world, you did not educate women, period. So for Paul to be like, no, go teach him at home, that was huge. Now we think, oh, he's being, condescending. No, he's being incredibly radical because you never taught women. And from there, we then have co-ed education. Co-ed education is a Christian invention because again, during that time, you never taught women anything. So when you have that cultural context, it just helps you not to misread scripture. So
Yeah.
But
And I think to what you had said earlier about humility, cultural context allows you to realize that your view is not the only view. It's not the end all and be all. And just because you have part of the picture doesn't mean that you've got the whole picture.
right,
Because a lot of times I think we try to claim God as being on our side per se. And I think about Joshua when when he asked the angel of the Lord, "Who are you for us or our enemies?" He says, "Neither."
right,
I'm on the side of the Lord. And it's like, I think when you ask me, like, what is it about this trip that's changed? It's like, well, instead of me trying to get God on my side, let me make sure I'm on God's side
right,
so
right.
that I am, following his lead as opposed to trying to convince him to follow mine. So,
Cool. So after this trip,
yeah.
do you plan on doing any more biblical themed journeys in the near future?
I don't know. We will see. We will see. I know if I did, I definitely want to do it when I was physically able to participate. I did participate in about 80% of it. I had asthma issues, I had some mobility stuff going on. But it's definitely awakened me in that way. I definitely would love to do some other things. So we will see what the future. I know Israel was something that it's just not possible to go there now because of all the stuff that's going on.
Right. Absolutely.
But it's definitely possible, and we will see what happens. Yeah.
Cool. Oh, if you do, I hope you come bearing gifts. A lot of videos and photos so that we can partake in your journeys. So yeah. Anything else you're doing that we should be aware of? Are you teaching anywhere? Any kind of
In terms of like, well, I'm retired, which I think I said the word.
right, right.
Nothing too much. I'm just working on some personal projects about how to stay involved and
Okay.
working with teachers, and that's a passion of mine. Working on learning another language. Just really exploring different things right now in this phase of life, so that I can. My prayer has been for years. Well, yeah, years has been that when I close my eyes for the last time,
Mm-hmm.
that I would have completed whatever God wanted me to do on this earth.
Amen.
So
Amen.
that is what I, whether it's little things like making phone calls, seeing how folks are doing, or whether it's bigger things like this, I just pray that I'm always open and receptive to wherever He might be leading me.
That's a great prayer. And with that, we're gonna be out of here. So this is Rachel and BK signing off. Peace.